Good evening, everyone. Come on in, and welcome to Broken Vessels Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Latoya Washington. I am so excited to have you here again, another week of sharing testimonies of hope, healing, and restoration. So come on in, please share. Also, just a reminder, be sure to email us at brokenvesselspodcast@gmail.com with the answer to our question of the day. We are still waiting to give away that amazing prize for whoever answers the question, and give us one moment and we will tell you what that question is. So come on in, come on in. Please be sure to share. Please be sure to let your friends and family know that we have a special guest again tonight. If you've seen the flyer, then you know it's going to be an amazing conversation with author Roe Braddy, and we can't wait to bring her on to share about her literary work and education experience. And it is such a great opportunity to hear all that God is doing in different lives around the world, but also in the city of Harrisburg, where I am from. So I'm so excited, so excited. Please be sure to share. Come on in, come on in. So before we get started, we just want to give a shout out and thanks to our sponsor, Rhema Creations Global LLC, as they continue to creatively express the word of God through books, apparel, and much more. Thank you to everyone who supported the Triumph Over Trauma celebratory event. It was amazing. We are still literally just floating on air because of the presence of God. And we are so grateful for everyone who participated and came and shared their hearts. Thank you to Pastor Annette Therese from Temple in the New Beginning Church. Thank you to Nicole Wilkerson from The Wound, Rashida Harris, the fire starters, as well as Prophetess Shekinah Glory, who traveled. And we are so grateful and thankful for your love, your support, your prayers all these past 5 years, y'all. Can y'all believe it's 5 years since the Lord said go and launch this podcast? So we are so grateful for the continued support. We pray that you continue to keep us in prayer, that you continue to go before the Lord on our behalf as we share testimonies of hope, healing, and restoration. So now that we got that out the way, y'all, I'm so excited because we are still trying to give away this amazing, amazing gift to our listeners and viewers. So the question of the day, y'all, was what is the foundational scripture for Broken Vessels podcast? I gave y'all a hint. I told y'all it was in Psalms, all right? So listen, go into the book of Psalms, and if you've been listening these past 5 years, you will know what our focal scripture is. So we'll give you guys an opportunity before the end of tonight's show to answer that question. And if we miss you, then you can email us at brokenvesselspodcast@gmail.com so you can get your free gift. And you're going to be excited about this gift because I'm excited to give it away. All righty. So thank you all so much for tuning in. I just am grateful. I want to just share how I met this next guest through a mutual group, The Womb, who the visionary of it and founder is Nicole Wilkerson. And so it is such an honor to be able to be in the room with other authors and writers. And I'm just excited to bring this guest on. Please give a warm round of applause, even though we can't hear it, but we're going to give a warm round of applause to our beautiful, beautiful guest, Roe Braddy. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in.
Hey, nice
We're
to
gonna
be here.
we're gonna get some hands one day. We're gonna get some hand claps in the background one day.
I hope so. Thank you for thank you for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome, and thank you for being here. So, Ro, I just want to take the opportunity for those who have not met you or to get to know you. Tell us where you're from, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, sure. Well, originally I'm from Pittsburgh, but I always say I'm a northern girl with southern roots. I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I spent most of my life, between Pittsburgh. This in the South. My parents were both from the South, so we spent every summer going back down south, and then a little bit of Chicago. So kind of all over the place. I've been here in Harrisburg now, oh gosh, forever. Uh, Probably close to 45, 50 years I've been here.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I
Wow.
came, well, maybe not that long, at least, yeah, at least 40 years. Making myself older. Yeah, we've been here for about 40 years. I met my husband in college. He had family here, and then I just kind of like migrated here and stayed here ever since.
Awesome, awesome. So after 34 years in education, what lessons from the classroom have most influenced your writing today?
Oh gosh. I used to always tell my students if they wanted to become better writers, they needed to read and they needed just to keep writing. So for a while I taught high school English. And when I did, I was also the advisor for a graduation project with seniors. And I think that was probably the most intense time of getting my kids to write because there was a paper that was required for them to write if they wanted to graduate. So they would
Mhm.
come to me and I would say, okay, get your computer out, go sit over there and write this paper. I said, don't show it to me until you have the amount of words needed, the requirement. And then I said, we'll work on it once you've gotten to that point, because they had already learned the mechanics of, what it takes to write a paper. And I remember that time. My room was dead silent. I really, really was impressed by my students because they knew if they didn't get this project done, they were not graduating. So in that time, while they were writing, that's what I was doing. I was just sitting on my computer and I was writing. So I think it was a big motivator to really, really dig in and start to get some of the stories that were in my head out. I didn't know what I was going to do with them at the time. I just started writing when my kids wrote.
That's awesome. That's awesome to share. So your stories, just you've written multiple books, and so your stories reflect societal issues like body shaming and the effects of technology. Why is that important for writers to address these topics?
Well, having worked with high school kids for so long, these are topics that they were all facing. And it's funny because even after I retired, I don't know what do I want to call myself? I'm somebody who sits back and observes. And some of the things that I would watch happen in classrooms or playgrounds or just even sitting in the cafeteria in a high school or an elementary school made me realize that these were topics that were going to be important to write about. Social skills, just how kids communicate with one another, and they really are struggling with these issues. They really are. So a lot of my writings that we were talking about earlier about social issues just come from watching what's happening to our youth.
Yeah, and and it's just when I reflect on it, I also see, the importance of the educators in our community, the importance of community for our young people. And it's such a sensitive area even for me because I remember the educators we had. I remember the teachers such as yourself that would say, "Hey, you need to have, reliable sources for this. They need to be credible. You need to make sure your writing is this." And, and I used to get so bad, like, I'm just trying to get this paper and get done. But I value that. It taught discipline. It taught the importance of research, and backing up what your argument is or what you're presenting. And I see our children need that. Our children need that discipline. They need that help and assistance and whatnot. So you're right. These are real issues they are dealing with even today. Like even more so it seems. There's a lot more issues that they have on their plate as young people. In knowing that, how do could your writing help assist with the young people today?
Um, when I started thinking about some of the topics that I've written about, I'll tell you a story because I'm a storyteller. I was I was subbing at the time after I retired. I subbed for a few years, and I was out on the playground. This was elementary, and I was standing across the playground, and on the other side of the playground, there was a little boy bouncing a ball, and the ball got away from him, and another little boy grabbed the ball, and he started bouncing it. Well, the first little boy went over and just smacked the other little boy who took the ball, and he didn't really take the ball; it just bounced away. So I ran over on the other side of the playground and I said to him, "Why did you hit him?" And he said, "Because he took the ball from me. It was my ball." And I said to him, "Really? It's not your ball. It belongs to the school." And I said to him, I said, "Now, you could either apologize or I'm going to walk you to the principal's office and then you can figure out what to do from there." And he looked at me like, "Who are you to tell me I should apologize?" And I just stood there and I waited. And I said, "Well, you can apologize or you're going to the principal's office." So he said to me in a very smug tone, and he didn't even look at the little boy he hit. He said, "I'm sorry." I said, "No, that is not how we apologize. Let's try this again." I said, "Now let me model this for you." So I looked at the little boy that had gotten hit and I said to him, "I'm sorry for hitting you with I'm sorry." And I said to him, "Now you got one more chance to tell this little boy
Mhm.
sorry, or you and I will walk to the principal's office." So he looked at him and said, "I'm sorry." And I said, "It's not as good as you could do, but okay." And at
Mhm.
that point, I realized, and the story immediately started brewing in my head. And I realized the importance of telling the story because I kept thinking about, and these kids were they were probably preschool, kindergarten age during the middle of COVID. So it started to make me realize how much COVID had an effect on kids that age because
Mm.
we were all quarantined and these kids were probably just struggling. The parents were probably struggling to figure out how to keep the job, how to balance, if they had older siblings, how to keep those kids, doing what they're supposed to do because they were no longer on brick and mortar schools. They were all virtual. So thinking about all this that parents had to handle, there was food scarcity, there was unemployment, there was so much going on during the pandemic. So writing these stories gave me an opportunity to have our society and the people who read my stories realize the effects that this period of time had on our youth.
Yes. And one thing I've noticed too with COVID and the increase in technology is, the young people are exposed to so much in such a short period of time. And there's not that breakdown, it seems, where I could come to, my family and say, what does this mean? And we can go over it together and sit down. Or, mom or dad or uncle may say, this is what they mean. Or, so there
Mhm.
was a little bit more time to process and to learn. And it seems like the technology is so overwhelming that by the time the young kid has gotten home, they've already witnessed so much violence and all of the news about COVID. They're unsure what COVID is. People are dropping dead. I mean, it was a really, really rough time for COVID for everyone. For everyone. So, do you think that has it affected or impacted the social development even more so now that we're kind of 5 years into COVID now? Do you think our young people have really been impacted socially even more?
I do. And the sad part is there were a lot of kids who were really struggling with social skills before COVID. Um, And I think, some of the issues that have never been come to the forefront still haven't been addressed now that we're out of COVID. You had kids who came home to, when I was a kid, they called it latchkey, but that's classic now. Their kids who come home and there's nobody there. And they do whatever it is. Usually it's the whole gaming. Gaming is so big. It's like kids can tell you anything about a video game, you know and their ability to use technology stems from their ability to do these video games on a computer or on
Mhm.
a phone. But if you say, okay, well, now what we're going to do is we're going to use that computer to write a paper. We're going to use that computer to do research. They don't have any clue on how to do
Mhm.
that because for them, computers technology is very one-sided. It's usually
Mm.
a thing of entertainment, not a resource for education. I mean, kids do a lot on computers now in school, but and even the educational programming is all geared to the reward of playing a game.
Mm.
Most of the programs that you see kids using that are academic, like for English, math, language arts, if you get to a certain level, you get to play the game.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the motivating factor is playing the game. So
Yeah, that's so true. I remember during one of the youth programs at church that one of the young ladies had created like a digital like trivia, and it was so cool, and the kids are just going and they're using their cell phones, and I mean they were really engaged. But I did see the shift once that game had stopped. It's like, okay, how do we keep their interest? How do we, so it is an interesting dynamic to study and learn and research. What is it that shifts? Is it the lack of dopamine that all of a sudden has stopped? Once they're no longer looking at this screen. It's so interesting that you bring that up, because I see it as well in our young people. That's
mm.
so awesome. So you work with people from all walks of life. How has that shaped your ability to tell authentic and relatable stories?
Oh, I years ago I worked for a vocational school, and part of my job was to work with adults coming in the computer lab to earn a GED. I'm working with adults, and I'm doing that now. Working with adults, um, working with adults and children is so different. You look at how you facilitate a program for an adult versus that for a child, but in the long run, what it is, it's the ability to be able to dispense information. You dispense it in a different way, but it's still that same thing, of facilitating and dispensing information, and dispensing it in a way that somebody's ability or skill changes. So I think the important part of that, and even, like when we think about writing, is that if you're telling a story, something that you're writing is going to change the way the person is thinking.
Mm. And that's so powerful because I see that in many different books that I've read over the years. There's something so profound that they say that I end up highlighting it or underlining it, and it just really sits with me. So that is so true to see that, writing has that ability to do that. And that's wonderful. So you mentioned that writers give voice to real world issues. Can you share a moment when your writing became a voice for something that needed to be heard?
Oh, sure. Oh, I guess maybe I did it for about maybe it was probably about 3 years. I was the editor in chief of the Black Wall Street, which is a local magazine here in Harrisburg. And one of the missions of the Black Wall Street was first to be able to give, and particularly the African American community, a resource. It was something I really, really enjoyed doing because I really believed in the message of the paper, and I always felt like what I was writing about was really important. I felt like what I was writing about gave life to situations that maybe people wouldn't have known about.
Mhm.
Okay, the unhoused. A lot of people felt like, oh, okay, if you're homeless, there's something that you have done in a negative way to make yourself homeless. Like, were
Mm.
you addicted to drugs? Were you an alcoholic? Where you just didn't pay your bills and you got evicted? And there were so many individuals where you find out, um, it, lost a job, couldn't keep up, didn't have family, you know, and it's that erasing that stigma of, you know, in that particular community of it's something that you did.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I felt that was so important for people to realize if, you know, you saw a person who was differently housed, it didn't mean that they were a drug addict. It didn't mean that they were just down on their luck and didn't know how to handle their money. There was so many different uh, issues surrounding that, you know, and I felt I gave people an opportunity to remove the stigma, to think differently about a population of people.
That is so true. And writing does have that ability to get you thinking. It
Mhm.
sheds light to certain topics, to issues, people that you never knew that they were going through this. I love to read different articles where it shares light about someone's story, their journey. You know, we just see where they are now. But when you hear about what they've been through or hear about when they went through homelessness and these type of things, it's so good to see how writing just sheds light to that. You know, I love it. So, what advice would you give to aspiring writers who feel called to tell their stories as well, but don't know where to start?
That's funny that you asked that because recently I started a critique group with several of the women from the womb. And one of the things I've been sharing with them is that first of all, your story, if you have a story, then you've got to take time to craft that story. But if you don't ever even start writing it, nobody's ever going to know you're trying to put it out in the world. So the first
Mhm.
thing is just start writing. Don't worry about how it sounds. Don't worry about, you know, like, okay, I'm not really good at English. I don't know. But that's all coming in the crafting. Just start writing. Get it out there. Don't procrastinate. And it's funny, a friend of mine who is at the very beginning stages of writing a memoir, she sent me what she had written and she says, "What do you think?" And I shared with her, and she's had some like tremendous things happen to her, and God has just really blessed her in so many in health ways. You know, so many things have happened to her, and she has an amazing story, and people deserve to hear it because it will make a difference in someone's life. But I said to
Mhm.
her, I said, you know, you got to go back in and you got to flush out these stories. Just keep writing. And she's an excellent writer. So my advice would be is that if you're going to write the story, make time for it. Like I pretty much write every day. Even if I only get 2 or 300 words in, I write every day or I'm thinking about it. You know, like right now I'm like 21, 22,000 words into a new novel. I wake up and I think, what's that character going to do today? I mean, I have an outline and everything, but I'm
Mhm.
literally thinking about the time period in which this character exists and what would they be doing today, even though I'm on my way to work. I'm not writing right now, but I'm connecting myself to what I'm writing, or I'm connecting myself to somebody who might want to read my writing, or I'm connecting myself to somebody else who is in the middle of writing a story and they don't know where to go with
Mhm.
their writing. So there's always this
Mhm.
opportunity to connect yourself to what you're writing or connect yourself to sharing your story with someone else.
That's awesome. And one thing I also love too about writing is just because we've written multiple books, I love when we get together and have critiques and we just go over different things with each other. Because I do believe we can grow, we can learn. It helps bring, you know, different perspective. I'm like, oh, I didn't even think to use that. Oh, wow, I didn't even realize I had written that incorrectly. So it's room for us to grow. So, you know, for those out there who are writing a book or who already written a book, you can still join a critique group. You can sit in and learn things and you know, it's a beautiful thing. And it also helps you, keeps you accountable as well. So that's why I like critique groups as well. So you now offer editing and publishing services as well. What are some common mistakes new authors make that you know that you can help them overcome?
Rushing. Rushing is a big thing.
Yeah.
Especially if you're, you know, like if traditional published authors are a little bit different because they've got these deadlines. You
Right.
know, if you're working with an agent or you're working with a publishing house, they set the deadlines for you. They need your book at a certain time. So you better be pumping it out, especially if they've given you an advance. But if you're an indie author, and I always say this, what did you have before you started writing? Did you have anything? Did you have a book? They were like, no. I said, so why are you in a hurry to get this one out? What's the point
Yeah.
of hurry? You don't have anybody's timeline to meet except yours. So being in a rush, you will end up having, lots of errors. You will end up putting out a poor quality book. You will end up not being able to get to a point where you advertise and promote the book because you're in such a rush and you don't take the proper steps. So, my biggest advice would be don't rush. You didn't have anything before this? Why are we rushing to get this out? What's the point of rushing?
Right. Right. And take your time. Take your time. And I think also to just kind of piggyback on that is to not compare yourself to other writers because of what they're doing. Like you don't have to rush. Roe is has written multiple books. Like there's no reason to compare. We're different writers. We're doing different genres and all kinds of stuff. So that there should be no comparison that's causing you to rush so you can finish this book because there's no need. Take your time, like Rose said. You know, if you need help, if you need assistance, right, reach out to Roe Writes for You LLC. Okay, go to a critique group, get to know some other writers, and take your time. I think it's so true. Pace yourself. Pace yourself. You don't have to rush for anything. You know, I remember when I was releasing the second self-published book, Concrete Rose, and I said, okay, I'm giving myself a timeline because I wanted to be accountable to getting this done. But it was no rush. I wasn't looking at anything else going on around me. I just knew, Latoya, get this done, right? Focus on this. Do this many pages tonight, just to stay on point. But you're right. There's no need to rush. There's no need to rush. And so, looking ahead, what legacy do you hope your writing and your work through Roe Writes for You LLC will leave for future generations?
Oh, that I was just talking about this the other day. I have three novellas, and the main characters in these novellas are named after my parents. Many of the things that have happened in those stories happened to my parents. And I can remember being a young girl sitting at my dining room table with my mother and my father sharing these stories about what it was like growing up in the South during the Jim Crow era. And it left such an impression on me. And is one of the reasons why, during COVID, I wrote these three novellas. So my kids, you know, I don't know. I said to them, I said, after I'm gone, and I said, I'm going to leave you all the notebooks, all the logins and everything on my computer. So because there's always a short story going, there's always something that I didn't get around to publishing. Like I have
Mhm.
a 58K fully developed novel that I wrote a few years ago that I have not gone back into. It needs to be edited. It probably needs to be reworked. But it's 58,000 words sitting on my computer of a story that I wrote during the incidents that happened around the George Floyd um,
Mm.
time. And I said to them, I said, when I'm gone, maybe you guys could publish that. I always say I wanted to be the next Zora Neale Hurston because she didn't really become famous until after her death.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And my daughter always tells me, like, Mom, that's morbid. We want you to become famous. I said, I'm not really doing this to become famous, but for somebody to say, oh, wow, that was such a good story. I never knew that happened. And,
Mhm. Mhm.
40 years ago, I never knew that happened. That's really fascinating. And then they create this conversation around something I wrote.
Mhm.
Like I love the Renaissance writers, like, Maya Angelou, James Baldwin, Toni Morrison. Zora Neale Hurston. These were all the people that I was reading that all had influence on what I wrote. And I remember reading them when I was in college and sitting and having conversations with other people who read the same stuff, going like, wow, that was so deep. That was like, how did that happen? So I'm hoping like when I'm gone, there's going to be another group of people sitting somewhere in a room going like, that Roe Braddy, that was really deep. That was intriguing.
Yeah, yeah. That's so powerful because you're right. You're leaving a legacy with everything you've written, with everything that you put out there. It's a legacy even with the critique group, because we need that support, someone who might be afraid to write because they don't know which words to use. I have a thesaurus and a dictionary, like old school, sitting next to my desk because I'm like, I don't think that's the right word to use. But that's because I actually sat down with someone who's a writer and they encouraged that. And I was like, well, wow, thank you. I never thought about that. So it's a beautiful thing. That is legacy too, providing tools and, helping others. So that is a beautiful legacy to leave, Ro. And so tell us about your books. How can they support you and purchase, or you have your books with you?
I've got a couple, but you know what? Most of my books are in my car. It's funny. All my extra copies. I am a traveling saleswoman. During COVID, I was at the store at home on Jonestown Road, and there was a
Yeah.
lady there, little tiny lady, shorter than I am, and I'm kind of short. And she was trying to reach up to the top shelf to get this little light. And I said to her, like, wait a minute, I think I can help you. So there we are, two short women trying to get this light off the top of a shelf. And she started to tell me the story. She said, I just wanted one of those LED lights because my husband says the light on my nightstand is too bright and it's keeping him awake at night. And I like to stay up and read. I said, oh, you like to read? She said, yes, I love to read. I said, what do you like to read? She said, I love a good, clean romance. I was like, oh, you do? I write romance. And she said, you do? And I said, yeah. So anyway, I told her, I said, I've got books that I've written and they're all like, historical romance. She said, oh, she said, I would love to get one. Where are they? I was like, in the trunk of my car. So she followed me out to my car and bought 3 books.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So one of the ways, like I always say, become your own spokesperson, and talk about yourself, talk about what you've written, and don't be like everywhere I go I'm like, oh, so you like to read, huh? I got something maybe you like. And I have sold a few books that way. If you're not,
Yeah.
if you don't toot your own horn, who will?
That's so true. And you know what? That is something that we've been doing over these past few years. Someone had purchased a like foldable bookcase that had wheels and everything on it. So there's no excuse. It's on Amazon, beautiful people. Put your books in your car. It's just a little foldable thing. It could probably fit about 100 books in there and travel with it. And, and take your books with you, like Ro is saying. I'm telling you, you never know who you're going to have a conversation with, and God might put them right next to you and you start talking to them about your book. I love it. I love it.
And
So
it's,
they can, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I did the same thing with editing and publishing. Somebody will say to me, I've in this last few weeks, I've had a couple people sending me their stuff. My barber, who is doing a book, just sent me his outline. Told me, "What do you think of this?"
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So many amazing books out there, and we just want to encourage you to write the book, write the book. If you haven't heard anything else, Ro is saying write the book. Take your time, write the book. If you need help, if you need some assistance, reach out to Roe Writes for U LLC. Talk to her, call her, email her, and just share. just say, I need help. And I'm telling you, you will have the help that you need. It's such a blessing to see all the people that God has in every single area possible. And to know that they are on Broken Vessels podcast, to be able to get their information out to our viewers and listeners is even more of a blessing. So, how can people reach out to you, Ro, to maybe purchase a book, to maybe talk to you about the critique group that you have?
Well, I occasionally I post things on the womb. So Nicole said that that's our group to post. So I just posted information about the critique group. So if you go to Facebook and you look up the womb, WOMB, you page down, you can find me there. But I also have my own pages. So you can find me on Roe Writes for You. That's on Facebook. You can also find me under Roe Braddy Productions, which is also on Facebook, or IG, which is Roe the Literary. Or you can reach out to me at rowritesforyou@gmail.com.
Oh, that is so awesome. That's so awesome. So thank you so much for everyone who tuned in. I wish we could talk more because Ro has written many books. But you can reach out to her, like she said, Roe Writes for You LLC, and also the different places that she's at on Facebook. The Womb as well is on Facebook, and that's WOMB, like womb. And so we hope to see you all supporting Ro and supporting each and every one of our previous guests and all their endeavors as well. Do you have anything else coming up, Ro, that you want to share? I know you said you're writing a book, or is there anything else coming up for you?
Oh, I've got a couple of things. And they're all I really got to give a shout out to our girl Nicole Wilkerson, because a lot of the things that I'm doing are all stemming from the womb. Lisa Lickers is having the Little Black Dress event, which
Mm-hmm.
I believe is May, I want to say May the 16th. I believe
Okay.
I'll be there. I will also be doing the Paint and Sip event, which is this coming Saturday. Yeah, that's going to be at the S Club.
Yes.
Yes. And then also the critique group, which meets over off of, let's see, that is the Paxton Center. Is it Paxton Center? I'm trying to think of the name of the plaza. It's the Panora Panora breakfast, Panora
Oh,
breads.
Panera Bread?
Panera
Yes.
breads. Yes, like Pandora. Panera breads over in off of Jonestown Road in that little plaza. So we meet
Okay.
here once a month, the first Saturdays of the month, from 9 o'clock to about 10:30. And
Okay,
we're
that is
yes, it's right across from BAM, the bookstore.
awesome. So right there, so you guys who have books, make sure you bring your books because the bookstore is right across the street. You never know who you might meet and who you might also see in Panera. So these are some good tips for those who are authors, or even tips for upcoming authors to know as well, to get your books out there for the future. So Ro, I thank you so much for being on the podcast tonight. Is there any last words that you would like to share for our listeners and viewers?
Well, if you're an aspiring reader, read anything written by Roe Braddy. If you're an inspiring writer, start writing. Just keep writing.
That's right. Keep writing, and be sure to reach out to Roe Writes for You LLC. And we thank you all so much for tuning into Broken Vessels podcast. We will see you here next week. And remember, in Christ, there is hope, healing, and restoration. I love you all. Have a blessed night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you